We're back for another edition of Catching Up with the RAMily, sponsored by New York Presbyterian, and a special guest this week. Fordham WFUV Sports Class of 2008 works for Yes, ESPN, The Zone, the R2C2 Podcast with CC Sabathia. It's Ryan Ruocco. Ryan, thanks for being with us.
You got it, man. You know, anything for you, for FUV, for Fordham, always, man.
Appreciate it, Ryan. How have the last couple of months been? I'm sure you're not used to being hunkered down at home. What's that last period been like for you?
Yeah, definitely not used to it. It's been, completely different. We use the phrase game flow. It's been like a completely different game flow for my life compared to what I'm used to. But it's been great. It's given me extended time with my fiance. We both usually travel a lot for work. So we spend a lot of time together, obviously, but never where it's just like, months of not having to be away from each other for some period of time. So that's been, a huge blessing. Spending time with my family, my two little nephews, like that's been a huge blessing. My future in-laws as well, getting some extended time on that front. Especially over the last couple months, because the first couple months when the virus was raging more so in our area, and the fear was at a higher level, and the lack of knowledge or awareness of mitigation tactics was at a lower level. Was more just Andrea and me isolated, but which was still had its own blessings. But I've tried to find the silver lining in all of it. There are definitely times where I feel a claustrophobia of, when are we getting back to normal? When are you just going to be able to go up and dap up your friends? And, when are we going to be in a ballpark watching a game without worrying about something? And if you really let yourself go there, that can be overwhelming. But when I focus on the day-to-day and the blessings that it's brought me, first and foremost, staying healthy, thank God, knock on wood. But just the time I've been able to spend with people I really care about in a way that I never would have otherwise. I've tried to let that guide me through until our world is put back together.
Speaking of that day-to-day that you mentioned, any new hobbies, any positives from this time that you've been able to take away?
Yeah, learned how to play chess, which has been great. I had learned when I was I want to say 16 or something like that, but I hadn't played in years and years and years, needed to relearn, and I love it. So that has been, that's been a great hobby. I was able to, especially when we were visiting my future in-laws, able to bike ride a ton, which I haven't been able to do in a long time, which was great. I was able to be a taste tester for my dad, and he is an amazing chef. So that was a new, not a new hobby, but like an accelerated one for me that was great. But a lot of reading. I think I had thought I'm going to go into this period and, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, whatever. And then, you just kind of navigate and meander your way through the days. And, we were doing a decent amount of digital stuff, so still producing content between ESPN and Yes, and then also the podcast for R2C2. But then a lot of reading. I've read quite a few books, and I enjoy reading, and it's been nice to have periods of time where I know, hey, I could just get lost in a book today, and I don't have anything I have to do. I read a book that's like 1,000 pages called Shantaram, which is one of my favorite books I've ever read, that I never would have probably been able to get through, because normally if I'm trying to read in the middle of a season, I'm I got to go do prep. And so if I'm reading a book, it's usually not a long book. And I like to read a lot, so I will read in season, but it's okay, I'm not going to start on something that's 1,000 pages, because I'm just not going to be able to stay into it when I get into it, because I'm going to have to go make game boards or whatever, So more reading, pretty consistent wine tasting, and and then I'd say soft T-shirt collecting as well, since there's been no need to put on anything else really.
Terrific. Some athletes we have talked to throughout this series have had routines, regimens to keep them loose, keep them fresh for the forthcoming seasons. For you as a broadcaster for ESPN and Yes, are there any ways that you've stayed fresh as a play-by-play man throughout this time?
You know, I watched back a couple broadcasts, which I think I probably could have, should have done a little more. But I reading helps me in some ways, vocabulary wise, just to stay sharp. Um, I think that I also sort of took the period of time as like I've been so go 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 with it because I don't really have an off season because of all the sports that I do, and I don't mind that. I love that. But so I kind of was like, well, this is a unique period. I'm not going to try and like force too much, but the ways in which I think I still was able to work on my craft was just via so many conversations that I've had, courtesy of Zoom and other technology, whether it's for the podcast or stuff we were doing for Yes or ESPN, like doing play by play of Peloton, a race for ESPN that we did, like doing demos for the horse stuff we did for ESPN, having conversations on Yes, different interviews, doing the intra squad games for Yes, just like different little things that were sort of tweaks to the skill set that allow you to maybe further develop skills or tap into new ones, or just try and stay sharp to a certain degree. But I'm sure that when I get back on air, I will feel like, oh, it's been a little while. When I used to, in the very beginning, when I was doing play by play and I was mostly just doing basketball and I was just doing nets, I would usually feel that when I do preseason games the next year, be like, oh, I haven't done really play by play in a while. Like I got to catch up with the speed of the game again, whatever. And then as I started to do WNBA, which was in the summer and bridged the two seasons, and baseball, really the reps is what kept me sharp. And it's the thing that makes you better, right? More than anything else. But I probably will take some time just in the couple days before I get back on air doing games to listen to some things again, like I had a couple weeks ago, but like listen to a little more and pick out things that I think I like and things I'd want to tweak.
Flashing back to your time at Fordham, you mentioned a lot of the roles you're currently in. You wear many hats, ESPN, Yes, DAZN. How do you feel Fordham and WFUV prepared you to be so versatile once you got out of the business?
Well, I think WFUV prepared me, to be able to do anything in broadcasting. We were so active in so many different roles, such incredible hands-on experience, both with the professional teams in our area, as you know, Emmanuel, as well as the Fordham teams, really being guided and steered by Bob Aarons and, the outstanding mentorship that he provided, and the way he honed our skills and the way he demanded that, when we were on a given task, we master that, just because I'm our lead play-by-play guy doesn't mean that when I do a feature, I can half-ass it, right? No, like, you're going to put the same focus and energy into that. Or if I'm doing a sports update and it's 60 seconds, it's got to be 60 seconds, nothing else, really is going to give you, carte blanche on those other assignments. You're going to have to still do them equally as well. And so I think just the access to so many different roles, talk show hosting, doing one-on-one, feature producing, writing, voicing, updates, and then play-by-play, as well as reporting and interviewing, being in clubhouses, you're able to develop a really broad skill set because of all the resources available, courtesy of WFUV. And I think Fordham, being as close to these professional sports teams in New York as it is, the location of the school and the diversity of the campus as well. And when I say diversity, I don't just mean as far as, race, religion, background goes. I also mean in personality. One of the things I loved about Fordham and, the different friend groups I had and just being on the campus was I felt like I was exposed to a lot of different kinds of people, just in the way they thought, in their views and their values, in their, interests. And I think that's really valuable because it can help, especially as you're learning more and more about the communication business, right? And I think there is sort of an empathy that's embedded in the way we're taught at Fordham, courtesy of the Jesuit aspect of things. But it can teach you to be a good listener and to learn to connect with people from all different areas who have different perspectives on things. And I think that's a valuable tool when it comes to broadcasting as well. I'm not a fan of sort of the, um, you know, abrasive style of talk show that, does garner ratings, but I don't think really valuably furthers our intelligence. I'm much more interested in learning and listening and in in really diving into, you know, exposing myself to experts who are disseminating on their given, fields. And I think that Fordham kind of prepares you for that, because I think in a lot of ways it teaches you to be a good listener. And so I think that helps with the skill set of broadcasting as well.
That's a great segue to your podcast, R2C2 with CC Sabathia. How much has that just taught you and educated you, being able to bring players on and various personalities and different professions and being able to just hear what they have to say and get the most out of them?
Yeah, a lot, a lot. If I think about how often I'm more interested in one of the people we interview after we're done, it's almost universally so. And I don't think that's usually the case when you just listen to a random post game interview of a given athlete, right? Or a random media interview of a celebrity or whatever. Like sometimes that happens. Maybe if they're sitting down with Oprah or Barbara Walters, or then you're kind of getting that feel of like, oh, I want to learn more about this person. But so often in our different, sports media fields, we don't necessarily provide the platform to really get to know these athletes better, and to spark further interest from ourselves in them. And the podcast provides that platform. It provides the setting for it. It provides a level of comfort where, people feel very willing to open up and to let us see, their true selves, and to express things that maybe otherwise they haven't had a chance to. And I think, I have to give CC Sabathia a lot of credit for that, because, he has this very unique combination of credentials, and approachability and honesty. CC is a rare sort of blend of those traits, because, he has the credentials, right? He's going to go to the Hall of Fame. He's won a Cy Young. He's won a World Series. He's been an ace. He's had the huge contract. He's pitched in New York, had success there. He's basically done it all, right? He's got the 3,000 strikeouts and the 250 wins. And yet he's also like this kind of like laid back, like fun dude who has a ton of diversified interests, and he's a diehard sports fan. And he's also very honest. CC does not say things to like get through a moment. I think I know I do this. Sometimes you're in a social engagement and you're just like, somebody kind of like, entertain something with you, and you just kind of like agree to just move on, right? And CC's not that guy. Like he is very comfortable just always saying whatever he truly believes. And I think that honesty helps our guests be honest, So like the podcast for me, I think I get to learn a ton about these athletes and other guests that we have, because they feel comfortable really sharing their true selves. And I always think like people are interesting, like if you get people to really talk about what makes them go, they can be so interesting. And the podcast provides that platform. So, I mean, just the most recent example, we had Tyler Glasnow on, young stud for the Rays. He could not have been more interesting. He was fascinating. And for me, all of a sudden it makes me be like, oh, all right, like I'm going to be further engaged in his starts. I'm more invested in his success. I want him to do well. I want to hear more about how he's doing. And it also, honestly, it helps with my preparation for my broadcast too. Because when I get to know these guys better, I now have material I can bring to the air during a broadcast that I otherwise wouldn't. Plus, it sort of gives me a more direct line of communication to athletes to provide me more information for the broadcast as well. So it's been a huge benefit. And most importantly, it's fun. It's really fun. Like I always get done and I'm like, man, that was such a good time. And our guests say that. I would say 95% of the time, the guest ends up saying, yo, that was a blast, but we got to do it again. And that, when you think about the way their time is at such a premium, that's the biggest reward to me as someone who's, conducting those interviews.
Ryan, you look ahead to the next couple of months, and you were just part of a Yes telecast, an intra-squad game where you were at a home studio and calling the game that was occurring at Yankee Stadium. What are some of the challenges you've had to navigate and answer for yourself as you prepare for a few more of those in the coming frame of time?
Well, the biggest thing to navigate for that was the first time through, we were actually trying to do like play-by-play ish of the broadcast, and then we kind of scrapped it to just like kind of round table conversation. But trying to do play-by-play on a laptop where the action you're seeing is just one square of a zoom, is like particularly challenging. But because what is that? It's like it's like a 5-inch screen. If no, it's like a 2-inch screen. I don't know. Whatever it is, it's not. It wasn't easy to figure out what's actually happening. But I think we're all just learning to adapt. And if you're serious about your craft, you are going to find a way to be great at it, regardless of the constraints. I've had to do games without stat monitors. I've had to do games where I have a ringing in my ear from something wrong in the control room. Had to do games where the producer couldn't communicate with me. Bob Aaron's our mentor. I don't know if I'm allowed to curse on this, but I can avoid it if you don't want me to. Okay, I won't. But he used to always say, Ryan, when stuff's live, stuff happens, and stuff is just a different word. But like I've always thought about that with broadcasts. When you're live, things are going to go differently. And I do think that prepares you for moments like this, where you may not have all the tools in the toolbox that you would want to be, at absolute peak efficacy, right? But that doesn't mean you don't adapt and still find a way to be great, and I think that's what we'll do. Some of the tangible challenges, well, for WNBA, for example, and for Nets on Yes, I'm going to be in a studio calling games off a monitor. I'm going to be socially distanced from my analyst. There's a lot of like communication that goes on with your analyst where you're, nonverbal throughout a game. That's going to be, that's going to be, I shouldn't say off the table entirely, because you will be able to do hand gestures, but you're not going to be able to tap, which, like, for some of my colleagues like Doug Collins and Doris Burke, they're all about tapping you during a broadcast. So that's going to be a challenge for them. But, seeing the full vision of the floor, which we're doing things to try and help with that. But, having communication with referees during the game to get more clarification on rules, having a better idea of what's going on in the arena if something goes wrong with the shot clock, and kind of being able to read body language, what's going on with who a foul was called on, all of those sort of things. And I'm sure there's going to be more things that come up within the workflow of a game that I haven't accounted for yet, that I can only understand once I experience doing this. But all of those things are going to be different, and they're going to be adjustments, and it's probably at times going to be frustrating. But when you look at it through the lens of, hey, we have sports back and that's awesome, and we'll adapt otherwise. And you also look at it through the lens of, hey, when you're doing things live, things happen. That I think will help to be able to acclimate to a new environment.
Ryan, a few rapid fire before we wrap up. You mentioned the great Bob Aarons. Is there a piece of life wisdom that sticks in your mind to this day, either while you were in college or after you left Fordham, that he passed on that you cherish?
Yes. And I almost get chills thinking about it. But I think it is the story I'll share is reflective of why I feel like WFUV has always had the right form of competition. And I have heard that it is not that way necessarily at other schools that also have very, prestigious broadcast programs. I don't obviously know from experience, but I've heard that from people who've experienced some other schools. And Bob, when I was a junior, or it might have been the end of my sophomore year, actually, he brought Lou Baricelli, Bobby Coyle, and me into a room. And I don't think Justin Shackle was there yet, but then Justin, the four of us are, all best friends and became a part of it. But, and he said, look, what you guys have built, this friendship is special, and it's going to last a lifetime. You're about to start competing for different jobs here. Never lose sight of the fact that the friendship you've built is more important than that. And I thought it was such a beautiful touch from Bob and such a, great stroke of leadership, because it's true, and there are ways to be competitive, um, without being cutthroat and without, trying to negate the accomplishments or abilities of your teammates. And I truly believe that, you know, we are at our best when we look to raise those around us rather than diminish their abilities and accomplishments. And I also believe that the cream rises to the top. And if you're truly great at something, it will eventually show. And people will recognize it and your opportunities will come. And so you're much better off being a great guy and, valuing the things that you would otherwise in life and trusting that the professional aspect of things will work out as it should than to undermine, what you truly believe is right just from a basic human interaction level in order to gain esteem in the professional world and then not feel good about how you did it and not be able to enjoy, the fruit of that labor. And while my parents certainly embedded me with the values to properly navigate that situation, I think it was a great reminder from Bob, and helped to put into focus as we were all competing for positions under him what mattered most to him. And to this day, we're all great friends. We root as hard as can be for one another. And I think it really speaks to the spirit of WFUV, especially under Bob, the way we all look out for each other, and I think there is a genuine lifting up. When I think about, the way that either Michael Kay or Mike Breen or Bob Papa or Chris Carino, or Spiro Ditas have gone to bat for me at different times in my career. It's amazing the way that they've really, really gone to bat for me. And, a Syracuse alum who's done the same for me in incredible fashion is Ian Eagle. I mean, he's been like a big brother to me since I joined the Nets broadcast team when I was 23. And he's always taken that same spirit that I think Bob imbibed us with. So I always think about that. I think about that a lot. And I'm really grateful for that foundational wisdom that Bob implanted in all of us.
You listed off that mega list of stars that have come from Fordham and WFUV. If you had to pick one of them to call a game with, to do a broadcast with, who would you sit alongside to do that broadcast?
Well, it's so hard. So is this is going to be a double play-by-play broadcast?
Yeah, so you probably have to do a baseball game and maybe split the play-by-play down the middle, like a baseball on the radio.
Yeah, got you. I've done things on air, at different times with Michael and with Ian. So, I think I would choose Mike Breen, just because I haven't necessarily had that experience to any degree yet, and I think that'd be really fun. I mean, I think Mike is an immaculate play-by-play guy. And I also think he's just a great dude who's hilarious too. I mean, he's really funny. He also loves wine the way that I do. And he has been he's been amazing to me. Like there's been multiple times throughout the last few years where he's pulled me aside, if we were in a road city together, or he's reached out to me via text, to share something really specific about a broadcast that I was doing that he really liked, and to tell me how proud he was of me and how great I'm doing. And, even when you are confident in your abilities and you believe that you belong, and that you can do anything in the industry, right? And even when you've had enough reps, and you have your confidence at that level where you believe that, and I do believe that, there's still something really special about hearing that from somebody you admire the way I admire Mike Breen. And I feel so grateful to have him as a friend and to have had, those different moments with him in recent years that really just further inject confidence into me and help bond us even further. So as much as I love Michael Kay and Iron Eagle, because I've had experiences with them on air already and they've been great, I'll choose Mike Breen and get to work with him.
Ryan, really appreciate a few minutes. Be safe, be healthy, and thanks for taking the time.
Emmanuel, anything for you, man. You're next up, baby. I can't wait to see that star blaze across the sky. We are all looking forward to see the amazing things you do. You have it all. Keep working hard, and we're going to watch an amazing career from you.
Thanks so much, Ryan. Appreciate it.
You got it.